There's this misconception that once you tokenize a real estate, everything changes. It doesn't change. It's still the same cap stack, it's same operating agreement, and the same asset. What changes is the optionality of liquidity.
Samuel Grossman. He is the managing director at Fairchild Acquisitions. And as of recently, I guess not so recently now, but he became the managing director of real estate services at Invenium. And he's broadcasting live from a real estate and blockchain conference right now. So how you doing, Sam?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me again. Yeah, I'm here in Miami at Reblock. Lots of exciting things going on here.
Yeah, I've seen all the comments on LinkedIn and shares. So it seems like pretty much anyone that's really heavy in this space or at least in this little niche, they're there in Miami. So sorry, I'm missing that. Hopefully, share your thoughts afterwards. But so NFTs, right now they're just JPEGs, right? Or at least that's what the public perceives them to be. It's just an image, the silly image that you can just copy and paste. Yet they seem to be selling for millions, and it's a little bit more complex than that. There's a little bit more to NFTs than that. So when it comes to real estate, how can NFTs be used for real estate, or how are they? How can they? What are we seeing there?
It's the tokenization of real estate. NFT, non-fungible token. It's still token. I mean, we can call it a fancy name. We can dress it up with a dancing animal and attach art to it. But the fact of the matter is that it's still a token. And so the answer to the question is you just need the data. You need to Invenium it, as we call it, better data, better value, better decisions. So going through that process, once you have the data credentialed, once you have the info on the blockchain, then you issue a token. And there's the tokenization of real estate is just optionality. There's this misconception that once you tokenize a real estate, everything changes. Well, it doesn't change. It's still the same cap stack, it's same operating agreement, and the same asset. What changes is the optionality of liquidity, and that is where the NFT comes in. So
it's the addition of value, right?
It's the optionality of liquidity.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just tokenizing an asset? Is it creating value? No, it's not. The asset has value. But by creating different options in liquidity, then that investment can be more attractive or more valuable to an investor. But just using an NFT, it's putting a costume on something doesn't make it more valuable. At the end of the day, the asset's still the asset, the data is still the data, and the value is still the value. But the difference is, with an NFT, the value is not a guess. The value of that NFT, that token, is backed up by data. That's real data and real value. That's the difference.
So to back that up, or to make it a little bit more, to simplify it for those who are completely new to this. So you can have an NFT that, say, is just art, and it's not backed by anything other than just art, like a Mona Lisa, if you will, whether it's a Bored Ape or whatever. And I'm not that familiar with those kind of projects. Or you can have an NFT, a piece of artwork that is backed by data, and that data says that, hey, that NFT belongs to this piece of real estate, right?
So yeah, NFT, I mean, it's a digital verification of ownership. That's what it is.
Kind of like a plane ticket. Like,
yeah,
a lot of people going on a plane ticket. I mean, you can print out your ticket, or you can just show them. It's not officially an NFT, but it almost works the same way. It's a digital representation of the data that's represented on the plane's manifest.
Yeah, so sure. So let's just take a piece of real estate, for example. The equity stack, right? The equity in a piece of real estate, or the investment in a fund. You own X% of that fund or that piece of real estate by signing your subscription agreement, your operating agreement, and wiring your money. Okay. So now Sam Grossman owns 4% of, ABC LLC. That's great. It's a piece of paper. I had DocuSign. That's wonderful too. What you're doing is you're replacing that interest with something, a token. That token is in my wallet. And now that token not only represents that, 5% ownership interest in that, but in addition, the data, the information, the transparency, the trust is created because all of that goes with the token. Mm-hmm. So, that's the NFT. We can keep calling it an NFT, or we can just call it a token because it is a token.
And I imagine as this evolves over time, that term, we'll see if it sticks. It may just end up being simplified. But yeah, a token.
So
and it's verifiable,
right? But once yes, exactly. So now here's the fun part, right? So now that you through your waiting period, now Sam decides he wants to liquidate his investment instead of waiting 5 years for the asset to trade or a refinance on that asset and get some money that way. Now that token becomes a security, and that security can be traded on the secondary market, just like Apple. So I want to buy Apple. It's worth $120 or whatever it is. I click a button. Now I own 1 share of Apple. The future, what's happening now, the future of this industry is you being able to click that button, Sam Grossman, list that token on an ATS, and Chris, wherever he is, clicks buy, and that transaction is done immediately. Now,
that or peer-to-peer too, like direct, I'm looking for that ABC LLC interest. Man, I just missed out. I want in. You've got to get out for whatever reason, and we do a direct transfer. Is that possible?
So you could do a direct transfer on the platform as long as the KYC AML has been satisfied on both sides.
Of course.
I would suggest that, we can stay away from peer-to-peer until we have a little bit more of a proven marketplace. But anything's possible. The fact is it's digitally transferring versus going through the due diligence and waiting for appraisals and waiting for title and waiting for this and that. Now it's a click of a button. That's what this whole concept is. In the click of a button, you can liquidate your asset instead of waiting for that cash event. So when I originally said it's optionality in liquidity, originally your option was to sell or to recap. Now we have the third option, which is to tokenize. And
that's what I was getting at originally. I think we'll probably have to end it here, is the adding the value. So not necessarily adding value to the real estate. The real estate has its value and that's intrinsic, but adding the value of the security, because a security now, an investor can look at security A. It's a traditional security, not tokenized, therefore very illiquid. Security B, tokenized, which depending on how that's structured, could have a lot more liquidity options. It seems like that's what you're getting at, and I think that's one of the most exciting part of this and how it reflects in real estate. So, man, appreciate it, Sam. I'll let you get back to the conference and look forward to seeing some comments on LinkedIn about what's to come.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Chris.